Ms. Shaw? Mr. Flores?
Present.
Mr. Before?
You know my name. Present.
Dr. Salinas?
Present.
I'm Steve Salyer, present. Dr. Montoya?
Present.
Thank you. No citizens be heard, Jackie? None? Okay. We're going to, let's skip to 4 here real quick. Fiscal year 2016 budget preparation workshop. Dr. Montoya.
Again, members of the board, one of the things that we did from the last budget board meeting that we had was we re-met with the cabinet and others to tighten up the budget so that we can be in the black. And at the same time, some of the positions that were there, we did cut some back that we felt were not needed. And maybe in the future, as things evolve, we revisit those, but we did cut some. And also, we're hoping to give some type of a raise, but at this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Elizondo.
Thank you, Dr. Montoya. I'm going to go to the podium so I can go through this presentation real quick, if you don't mind. All right, I'm going to review a few documents that we provided for you in Board Book, and they're the same documents that we reviewed at the last board meeting, as Dr. Montoya mentioned a minute ago, with some changes to them. The first change that and I'm going to start off on page number 5 in your Board Book, where it's up here on the screen as well. Oops, it was on the screen. We're doing this a little bit different than we have in the past, so we'll see. Hopefully this will work out okay. All right. The very first thing that I want to just bring your attention to is that we changed this number right here, the 21,800, which is the ADA. I think it's an attainable number based on about 23,100 enrollment for the district. We're actually expecting more than that. So what we actually do is we take that 23,100 times that 94.6% to come up with this ADA number. This attendance rate here is a little bit lower than our actual, and the reason we do that is just to make sure that we have a little bit of cushion in case something happens, that we don't have to come back to the board later and say we didn't meet our revenue estimates. It's not too far off. As we're trying to approve this budget, I pushed the numbers to more realistic numbers. In the past, I tried to give myself a little bit more room. There isn't that much room here, so when the board or we come to you during the year with budget amendments, I don't worry as much because I know I have a little bit of cushion in there. This year's going to be really tight, so we're going to have to really watch those budget amendments because I'm not going to have that revenue to offset any expenditures that we bring to you. Not very much anyway. I'm going to just continue on if you ask me if you have any questions. The tax rate that we're proposing for the M&O side is $1.04. It's the same thing that it is this year. There's no change there. And as you all know, there is some legislation that was passed waiting for, I don't know if it's been signed or not, but to change the homestead exemption for our taxpayers that own homes, an additional $10,000 amount. So currently the homestead exemption is $15,000, and they're going to increase it to $25,000. It is going to require that the voters approve that, but the way that they're telling us we're going to have to administer that is we're going to send out the tax bills in October, as we usually do, and it's going to include the $25,000 homestead exemption as if the voters had already passed it. Then there's going to be an election in November to have the voters decide whether they want it or not. If the voters approve the exemption, then that's all that happens. They pay the bill we sent them and we're done. If they do not pass it, then we have to send them a supplemental bill for the difference of how much they owe us, between the original bill we sent them and the new bill if they don't pass that additional exemption. Being handled that way, and I think it's going to pass. Obviously, the legislators do as well, or else they wouldn't ask us to probably handle it that way. But it's going to be a little interesting to watch, but I think it'll go through.
Have you put the numbers together as to what the effect would be?
We did do that, but for the school districts, we're going to be held harmless from the state with that. So whatever money we lose, I don't have it on top of my head, but we did put those numbers together. The state's going to make it up. So we're going to get it from the state instead of from local taxpayers. Okay. So these numbers that I'm going to show you here do not show the exemption, right? The additional 10,000, but it doesn't really matter because it will just be a decrease here and an increase in state money in a minute. So net effect will be zero when it's all said and done. So we are showing that on our local taxes, we are increasing by about $7.8 million. Again, that's because of the increase in local appraisals, a lot of new businesses that came in, and reappraisals on existing property on homesteads and existing businesses. The total amount of local revenue that you see here is that we're anticipating to collect about $79.2 million, $79.3 million for next school year. And I'm gonna keep going. If you see anything you wanna ask, please just tell me. A little bit lower, we have a section that's for the state revenue, and this is the money we receive, of course, from the state, and it's based on our ADA. It's based on all the special, like, it'll show you some different environments, special education, career and tech, comp ed, and there are different elements that create that funding mechanism. But all in all, we think that if we look at the bottom line there, it shows that we're gonna get about $94.2 million from the state in state funding for this next year. And then we have that TRS on behalf that y'all hear me talk about, which is kind of like the Social Security matching portion that we have to record. We show it on the revenue side, we show an equal amount on the expense side, so it's a wash, but we're required to show it. So it looks like from the state, we're actually receiving $101.7 million approximately for next school year.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
On the revenue that we're expecting to get, well, on the budget that we had last year, the 99 million, what are we coming in at? How close to what
I-
this budget number?
That number relies a lot on PEMS data, and we have to do a summer submission for PEMS based on the actual enrollment for the entire year and where all the different kids were at. They're gonna do the first run tomorrow, Wednesday, so I'm supposed to get the numbers either tomorrow evening or Thursday morning. Once I do that, I'll plug it into the template for the 14-15 school year, which is our current school year we're in right now, and I can give you a better idea. I'm thinking that we're probably gonna pick up another $2 million off of that number, based on what our actual ADA was versus what we budgeted on.
And I know you've always been good at that, but for this new budget, you're saying we don't have that kind of luxury.
No, to be able to afford all the things we put in here, including the TASB study and everything, I made sure that we were gonna attain those numbers, but I didn't have as much cushion as I do. If I were to just kind of guess as to what my cushion level is for this next year, without really knowing how many kids are gonna show up and what the attendance is gonna be like, I'm thinking probably $500,000 to $1 million is what we have as a cushion in there, when I'm used to having, $2 to $3 million as a cushion in there. Okay. And which sounds like a lot of money, but for a district our size, it really isn't. We can spend that, as y'all well know, in just really quick. This past year, amendments that we made throughout the year were about $13 million in amendments, including the transfer to Evans Road that we hopefully will get back when we pass bonds and things like that. So we can spend a lot of money real quick if we're not careful. I'm going to continue on. The next section we have on here has to do with federal revenue. For this next year, we're anticipating receiving about about $3.4 million in federal revenue. The largest amount of an increase in here has to do with the SHARS money, which is, again, the funds that are reimbursed to us from the federal government for services that we provide for students with special needs. They're like speech therapy, occupational therapy, those kind of things, nursing for our students. The government realizes that if the school district didn't provide those services, those parents would be going out to different providers and using some kind of other federal program for that, so they allow us to get direct reimbursements from them, so that the students don't have to miss classroom time. They can be here while they're still receiving those services. Yes, ma'am?
Tell me again what those services are, special ed.
There's a myriad of them, but the big ones that we get a lot of money for are our speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, transportation that has to do with special education. We receive some funding for that. Nursing that has to do with there's certain things, not all nurses, but certain services that we provide that we get reimbursed for as well. Those are the major ones. And we belong to a group that's out of the Houston ISD area. We signed a contract with them, and they're the ones who are helping us with this. And as you can see, we have a nice increase. They're very knowledgeable and very supportive. We used to be with a different group before who provided some support, but not really the level that we needed. And when we reached out to them, they said, oh, yes, we can definitely help you increase your revenue. And, of course, they get paid a small percentage off this as well. So it's also to their benefit to maximize our revenue as well. You bet. And so total revenue out of the general operating fund for next year, we're anticipating about $184.4 million. As it's about a $10.3 million, $10.4 million increase over the current revenue that we had originally anticipated for this year. I'm going to move down to the expenditure side. On the expense side, we have this starting number here of $140,380,000. And what that is really is just an addition of this number right here, the 139. It's the bottom line number that you have here, which is really like your ending salaries and benefits for the past year, and you bring it forward, and then any amendments we did during the year, For new staff, because we had more enrollment show up or we added new positions, we had to add that to this number. That's why it's a little bit different to come up with our starting point. And then we run that against our payrolls, our finance system, to make sure that that number is realistic, that there's not something that we've missed in that number. And that number is, it is realistic for what we're looking at. For new staff and new staff upgrades and deletions, we'll look at that list in just a minute. There's a list that's also in your board book about the different staff that we're looking at or asking for next year. The bulk of that, about $1.7 million of that, are for staff that has to do with enrollment increases, like 15 staff members for elementary schools. I think there was like 4 or 5, correct me, Miss, you have the document there, Miss Hernandez, it's like, how many is it for middle schools? Six for middle schools and 5 for high schools, as well as a new principal for the Evans Road High School and a secretary for the Evans Road High School. But we're gonna cover that list in just a minute in more detail, so we can, if you have any questions, you can, welcome to ask now or ask then. Then the next number that you see here, the $6 million, this is the TASB salary study that was done that Ms. Cadena reviewed with y'all at the last meeting, budget meeting. It has incorporated in there approximately a 3% increase to our salary increase for our employees. There's also an adjustment to the midpoint that's incorporated in there, as well as a number, I think it's like $1.8 million worth of actual salary adjustments to people, staff members that are below the market, to try to get them to market, so we can make sure that we're being competitive and we be able to retain those individuals and hopefully hire other individuals into those positions when we have vacancies. So total for next year, we're looking at about $148.5 million in payroll cost, including benefits and payroll. Yes, ma'am. No problem.
So why is there nothing for TRS contribution and health insurance district contribution?
Sure. Last year, the reason you see those numbers there is because they were added last year. So that $1.4 million is a pass-through from the state that they said, hey, you need to help, the school districts across the state need to help fund the TRS program because they're having some issues funding-wise. And so they, for this 14-15 year that we're currently in, they gave us the money to actually pay for that. For this next year, they're not giving it to us anymore. But more to your question, though, is that was a brand-new item last year. This number now got rolled into this $140 million up here. And right beneath it, that health insurance, the board asked that we increase the contribution from the district for our employees for the health insurance, and it cost about $900,000, and that was a new item this past year. Again, it got rolled into that $140 million. That's the beginning number for this new year. And the same thing for that workers' comp. We started that program up again because we stopped contributing to it for a number of years, and that number again got rolled into that $140 million for the next year. So they're not new items. If I had to increase any of those, you would see numbers there saying, for instance, if we felt like workers' comp wasn't enough, that we needed to add more money, like another 100,000 or 200, you would have seen it in that next column, but there isn't a need to do that, so we didn't include anything there.
Thank you.
You bet. Moving down next to the next category are the operating costs. This is that about $28 million and change. That's the list that we review that lists all the schools and the departments and what they're asking for, and we're going to review that list in a minute again in case y'all have any questions, but that's about $28 million. Then we also have that TRS on behalf on the expense side, as I mentioned a minute ago, to offset the revenue. So our expenses for next year with this current budget that we're looking at is about $184.4 million. Net, it's really a break-even budget. I mean, it shows a surplus of about 9,000 and change, but it really, for all intents and purposes, it's a break-even. I'm going to continue on to the next fund, unless anybody has, just to kind of, I guess, show at the bottom. Our anticipated fund balance that we're looking at the end of next school year, not this school year, but end of next school year, is about $32.9 million if everything goes as planned. Our magic number, again, is $31.3 million. So we're, a little bit above that, 17%, so that's a safe place to be at. Yes, sir.
Does that 32 million include or not include what we have left over that we set aside for land?
It does not include it. That's above that. There's about $1.5 million, yes, sir. A little over that, but that's a good number. Okay, I'm going to continue on. The next document we have is the same information for the Child Nutrition Fund. Again, this is the fund where we pay for the lunches and breakfast that we serve for our students and faculty. The revenue side, and again, this fund can only be used for that purpose. It can't be used to operate anything else in the district, only the food service program. On the revenue side, this particular budget that we prepared is at the current lunch prices that we have right now, and current breakfast prices. Everything is as is right now. We're not changing anything as of right now. So that's how this budget was developed. And the reason I'm stating that is because in the board meeting that's coming next week, I think there's an agenda item to discuss lunch prices. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at this. This is at current prices. The revenue on the local side, again, you can see that $2.2 million is what we're collecting from. Really, the majority of it is made out of from kiddos that pay for their full lunch and teachers that pay for their lunches. There's a few other little things in there, but that's the majority of that. Interest, we're not getting anything right now. The interest rates are terrible. We were budgeting $10,000. We used to get over $200,000 in this fund, but not anymore. We also receive a little bit of money from a summer feeding program that we do. About $150,000 is what we budgeted for this summer. And there's also this, we call it a milk suit settlement, but it's also money we get from the state because there was a settlement with the milk situation a long time ago because they were price fixing. So it's about $70,000, not very much money. On the federal side, we receive money from the U.S. Department of Agriculture to subsidize our lunch program for all the free lunches that we serve and reduced lunches that we serve and breakfast. This part is for the lunches. About $7.1 million is what we're estimating for next year. About $2.2 million for the breakfast program. And they also give us commodities like y'all are probably familiar with the cheese and the ground beef that we use. And we also have to report a value of that. It's about $740,000 that we're estimating for next school year. So all in all, we're looking at a revenue of about $12.6 million for that fund. On the expense side, we're looking at, again, we're bringing the number over. We didn't have any amendments for salaries during the year, so it's just that number right over, coming over, and that's sufficient to pay what we really have out there. As well as we're looking at the TASB increase and some other positions that are being requested that we'll cover in just a moment. When we get to that, it's about $250,000. So about their payroll costs, about $5 million. On the operating side, it's about $7.7 million, and this covers everything for their program from fuel to food, bowls that they buy, anything that they buy is included in that number. If you have any questions about that, we'll be happy to review that with you as well. So all in all, on the expense side, we're looking at about $12.7 million. We're looking at about $178,000 loss for the next year out of that fund, which is fine because, again, this is the fund where we have to maintain that fund balance number that we're trying to keep within that 3-month maximum, excuse me. And so that will still be in line with that, and it's getting us to the target that we need to get to, so we should be fine.
Mr. Elzone?
Yes.
Do all of the elementary schools have the summer feeding program?
No, it's not all the elementary schools. There are, I couldn't tell you, I know Mr. Jones is here, and he probably knows off the top of his head, but there are, if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of put him on the spot. Do you know how many elementary schools or which ones?
Johnson ISD is operating several different camps. We have 2 that are open all summer. Started on Monday, and they'll be open through the 23rd of July. And we have 1 middle school and Wagner High School will be open that time. The others are open for camps here and there throughout the course of the summer.
Thank you.
But if you'd like more information, we can definitely get that for you.
Jose,
Yes, sir.
is there any money in this budget for the kitchen remodeling, or is that coming out of some, I know we were talking about that.
Right. No, sir. If we're talking about going from the serving kitchen lines to a full-service cooking kitchen, no, there is no money in this budget for that. As a matter of fact, the Child Nutrition Program does not allow you to spend money from those funds for that kind of a construction. Now, they can buy equipment for the inside, but they cannot actually buy, to add to the building or anything like that. That has to come out of some other resources. The last time we did that, we did it out of bond money, and it differs. Each school is different, so how much it costs may range anywhere from $2 million to $5 or $6 million. It just depends on the layout of the school, what modifications need to be done to accomplish that. So I know that it's something that it's still something that we're trying to move forward on, but it'll be probably another bond item where we will look at that and see if the board wants to proceed with that.
It's a lot of money.
Yes, sir. It is a lot of money. So that's all I have for the Child Nutrition Fund. The next fund that I'm going to cover real quickly is the Interest and Sinking Fund. Oh, yes, sir, Mr. Salinas.
Before we move on, we're going to continue the free breakfast for elementary, middle school, and high school.
Yes, sir, we are.
At the beginning, the numbers were kind of low, but I understand they've been picking up as the time has gone on. Is that correct?
Mr. Jones shaking his head yes, so yes.
Okay.
Sir.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Okay, the next fund that I'm going to review is the Interest and Sinking Fund. This is the fund, again, where we pay, and it can only be used to pay for principal and interest on the bonds that we've sold. So it's just like your mortgage for your house. You get a loan, you have to pay back the principal and interest. That's what this fund is for. We can only collect money sufficient to pay the principal and interest. And, I mean, sometimes it can be a little bit off, but not greatly. And we make 2 payments a year. We make one in February and one in August. And for next year, we're anticipating collecting about $27.9 million in revenue. Oh, let me back up a minute. Because of the increase in tax values, we are looking at our tax rate, and it's not significant, but I still wanted to share with you. Our current rate is 0.385 is what we charge our taxpayers. We're going to lower it a little bit to half of a penny to 0.38. And I know it doesn't seem significant, but we have to be able to maintain that. Only collecting what we need to pay for that, that's what has to happen. So just wanted to know, that's what we're going to propose, is that we drop that rate by half a cent. Okay. So with that rate, we're looking at collecting about $27.9 million in local revenue. The majority of that, 27.7 of it, is for taxes for current year, and then there's some prior year stuff in here as well. The state also helps us pay for some of that debt. They provide money to 2 programs, the existing debt allotment and the instructional facilities allotment. They're a little bit different in how they operate, but that's about $3.2 million that they're going to help us with for this next year. That number fluctuates, as you can see here, every year, depending on how much debt we have to pay and which particular bonds they said they were going to help us with. It's more critical in this IFA one because that is really geared to 2 specific bonds, and it depends on what the payments are for those 2 bonds. So all in all, we're looking at revenue of about $31.1 million. On the expense side for that fund, we're looking at principal payments of about $12 million, interest of about $19 million, and some administrative that they charge us to be able to pay all these bondholders. So we're looking at about $31.1 million as well, close to it for expenses. We're going to have a surplus of about $35,000 if all works out as planned. Anybody have any questions? Oh, and this one shows a huge fund balance down here, that $15.5 million. The only reason it does that is we have this note down here at the bottom. Our fiscal year ends June 30th. That payment is not due until August 1st. So we're collecting money during this fiscal year to pay in August. So out of that $15 million for each one of these years, there's approximately a $9.5 million, $9.3 million amount that comes out of there to come back with our true fund balance for those funds.
Jose, any
Yes, sir.
bonds coming up for refinance? Like
Yes,
did?
we have some bonds, we have some opportunities right now. We've been monitoring, the board actually approved a refunding of some of those maybe 3 or 4 months ago. We've been monitoring those rates. One time they kind of got close to where we wanted, but they're not quite there. So we're hoping July, August, we'll hopefully hit those magic numbers and we can send them out there and get some of that savings we're looking for. We're trying to reach the $2 to $2.5 million savings on those bonds. And there's something that's called negative arbitrage. So we actually have to get more savings than that to pay off that negative arbitrage so we can result with some decent money as well. And we're not in any hurry to do it. Sometimes we have to do it right away for a reason. Right now, there is no hurry to do it, so we're just monitoring to get those rates that we're looking for.
What's our outstanding bond balance?
I'm going to show you that in just a minute. I knew you asked me that last time, and there's a slide in here about that. It's going to be almost the last slide we're going to cover, but we'll cover it in a minute. All right, this is the fun sheet that everybody likes. This is the first one of these. Can the audience read that okay? Need to zoom it a little bit. Let me see if I can make it a little bit larger for y'all. See how much we lose here when I do that. Kind of show you an idea. I don't know if that helped or not. But anyway, this particular first page has to do with the campuses. Again, the way we allocate funds to the campuses is based on their projected enrollment for next year. And then we do a settle up with them in October once they do their PEIMS data. We look at what we projected versus their actual enrollment. We give them any additional money that we shorted them. So for next year, there's a proposed column here that says for proposed 2015-16. It shows you what we're giving each one of the campuses. If you see any variances over here in the last column, it's because their attendance is either going up or down based on our projections. Okay, I'm going to continue to go down. So that's for the total, for campuses in total, we're looking at approximately $2.4 million for next school year. I'm going to keep going to the next page if that's okay. So if you have any questions, stop me, please. This next page has several, it's where the department starts, and you can see it starts with the school board. And I don't know if you want me to go through these or if you all just want to ask questions. If you have questions on these pages, whatever you like to do is fine. I know you all looked at these last time. We made a few changes since last time. Not many changes, but there are a few. In the school board, real quick, I'll cover that we did adjust this number. Last time it had the election costs were included in both of these. Now, as you can see, it isn't anymore. It just shows 84,000 for the school board, the majority of that being TASB costs, and then the election costs are down here at the bottom. And there is a internal audit row there. The last month when we presented this, it showed $75,000. We decreased it to $40,000. That number is up to the board, whatever y'all like it to be. If you want it to be 0, it can be 0. If you want it to be 25, whatever y'all want it to be, we can change it. The reason for that money being there is the board has an internal audit committee of the board that y'all are going to decide if y'all need to do any audits during this next year, and if so, what areas, and that's just to allow some money for that. If y'all don't want it, we can remove it. Same thing for the $110,000. The board has not called for a bond election. That's what that is there. That is what it is there for. If the board decides, hey, you know what, we'll amend the budget when and if we call for a bond election, then we can do it at that time. We can remove that $110,000 from the budget. But we put it in there just in case y'all wanted to leave it in there in case we do that. Mr. Salinas? Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, we're gonna go back to page 9, Campus 112,
Yes, sir. Candlewood?
Candlewood. I see that we decreased the budget by a little over 5,000. Does that mean they're gonna have less students?
That's what the projection is, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You
That's
bet.
all I have.
And if, like I said, just to make sure that if they, for some reason, if we miss the projections in October, when they do their PEEM snapshot, we'll adjust them and give them the rest of their money. Okay. I'm gonna,
We're on page 10, right?
yes, sir.
Can I ask a question?
It's fine with me.
Okay. On the superintendent budget, we reduced it by 8,700. Was that a request, Dr. Montoya, or just you feel that that's what's needed, 12,856?
We felt that's what was needed, and obviously, if we have to change it, we would come back for an amendment later, but right now, that's our most realistic number.
Oh, okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, Mr. Lizon.
You bet. Anybody else have any questions on that page, or can I keep going? I wanna
On
keep
page
going.
10?
If y'all want to come back or stop me, I'm going to keep moving then. Well, actually, these next pages as well, page 10, 11, 12, they're really just listing all the departments with their requests. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to address any questions that y'all have. Like I said, they're.
Yes, sir, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Which number?
And it's, well, maybe it's for Dr. Montoya and not you.
Okay.
Dr. Montoya, is it possible to have the person that is responsible for that department to make a presentation on an item?
Yes, if you request
Can
that,
it
we
be
can do
pulled out
that.
of this?
Yes, we can have that happen.
When do I ask for that?
If we can't do it this evening at maybe the next,
Tuesday.
yeah, the next meeting, we could, if you request it.
Can I ask for it tonight, for next
Yes,
week?
please.
Yes, sure. Who would you like?
What number? Code number?
Okay. Ms. Berra, 802, grant writer.
Okay.
And Ms. Robinson, 999, dual language. On pages 11 and 12.
And Ms. Michelle, just to make sure that we address your concerns, can you tell us a little bit what you're looking for as the concerns, or what you'd like us to cover?
Yes, sir. On the dual language, Ms. Robinson, I would like to have explanation on the number of campuses that have the program and why it isn't extended to all of the elementaries.
Well, that's easy to explain. We're not asking for money here, though, so that report's not, the presentation won't be tied to a budget item, correct?
No,
You want it in addition to budget?
I want more information on, I think it could be a budget item, I know it's not gonna be for this next year, but I just thought that the concept
Mm-hmm.
of the program
Hmm?
was for as many elementary kids to profit from it
Mm-hmm.
as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand why all of the elementaries are not involved.
Be glad to explain it.
Thank you.
It's not tied to a budget item this year.
No, but that's a good
Mhm.
question.
And for the grant writer?
And for the grant writer, ma'am?
I wanted to know how much has been brought in from whatever grants, what the grants were, and how much has been brought in.
14, 15 school year, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, easy. Oh, it's easy.
No,
Easy
no, no,
peasy.
no, that's great. That's great. Don't be afraid to ask. Yes.
Any other board members on those pages? Yes, sir.
I have a question on, under the truancy monitoring, 999 under Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes, sir.
And I know that truancy.
What page, sir? I'm sorry.
Page 10.
Oh, okay, we're coming back. Thank you, sir.
I know that the truancy, directly affects how much money we're getting, so we're trying to reduce that number. We're trying to reduce that number of truancy. What are we doing to help in that? I guess Mr. Gonzalez, we had talked informally one time on it, I believe that we had spoken, it was like 95% attendance?
95, yes, sir, it's around 95%.
Okay.
But we have case managers that support both at the high school and at the middle school, where we try to avoid going to court. So we have a pre-court program that puts them on a monitoring situation. And once they pass through like a 30-day program, then we hope to show gains on their attendance. I have a final report that I can submit to you by Friday that shows the gains on that.
Is there any new legislature coming through to?
There is
not-
some legislation that we're waiting to see if the governor vetoes or passes by the 21st. And we're currently in a program where there are more measures that we would have to take before filing. What they're attempting to do is decriminalize truancy by putting it more in the civil court where no warrant is issued to the students. So we currently are we were in a pilot program last year. We're trying to understand what the nature of the laws are going to be as they impact student attendance, who we can file on, when we can file on them. But our goal is to try to impact students before we get to that point. And that's where the AIM program has had some impact on the students, turning a student that's had a 68 or 70% attendance rate into a 92% or 95% attendance rate. So we've been with that program. We were a pilot with that program and have been with them for about 7 or 8 years. And they've had to understand how they're going to improve in dealing with the laws as well. So we're learning from each other as well as learning from the precinct. So as we continue to get into that law and as we understand the legislation, we may be having some budgetary wants and needs within the next year or so.
Now, the 95%, that's district-wide. Do you have the breakdown of primary and secondary?
Each 6 weeks, we have a report that shows elementary and secondary, and by campus as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And if you like that information, Flores, we could definitely.
Hold on, sir. I have a question, the same thing that Mr. Flores was asking. Next Tuesday, if you can bring us, I think you have the report by campus, right? For 14, 15, would that be possible to what percentage they ended up at?
Yes, we can.
The campuses?
the ADA per campus.
I believe we can, yes, sir.
If you can't have it for next week, that's fine. We can wait till the following week, sir. I don't want you to think I want you to rush. But if you think you can get it for us, that would be great, okay?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, we should have, we do an initial one, and then we do a cleanup, and then we do a final one. So for next week, we can probably have the initial one. If you want to see the final, it'll probably take a few weeks before we get to that point. Okay, you bet. Whatever page you want in that 9 through 12, whatever, any of those areas you have questions on.
Since we're talking about an ADA, I think Dr. Montoya had mentioned that maybe he was going to press for 1% for 15, 16, if I remember correctly. Is that right? Dr. Montoya, you said you were going to talk
yes.
to all the campus and say,
To
we
try
got
to
to work, let's
yes.
try for 1%.
Yes, to increase.
it by 1%.
Yes, to
I'm
increase
sorry.
it, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to bring that out. Thank you, sir.
Make a big difference in the money.
Yes, that's correct.
I do want to show, or just bring up that last time there was an error in here as well. One of the board members asked about the Princeton review, I believe, or the essay prep, the prep, and we did, and we had originally budgeted 100,000, and the correct number was 200,000, and it's been corrected on here. It is under Ms. Robinson, 999, and it says Princeton review. Sorry, I'm not, I knew you were going to ask me that. It is under,
Out of the library.
okay, yes. Yes, sir. Second item from the top. Second, third, no. Mine's different than the one y'all have.
Oh, I see, right, the top three. The first 999.
Oh, thank you. Oh, okay.
Yes. And that's the same amount we spent this year. Yeah.
I do.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm still having concerns about that understanding our differences that was board requested.
Yes, ma'am.
If there aren't any results available, or there's some kind of justification, I would like to see, then I think that should be eliminated if, page 13, board, I'm sorry,
Yeah, I have it on.
understanding our differences.
Right.
So I would like to see some proof that that program is justified for $20,000, and it's at one school. It's at one school. If it's a great program, I know there's more than one school that needs it.
If I may interject, Ms. Burchell, have you had an opportunity to meet with Ms. Ross, our go-to Metzger, to evaluate the program directly?
No, sir. I've not gone to
I
speak
believe
with
that
her.
once you do, you'll be impressed. It's kind of hard to validate that. But in the same respect, I also am looking for some data. Anytime we spend money, anytime we can measure that return on investment, it's critical that we do so. So I do believe, when I spoke last with Ms. Ross, that that was something that was being compiled, because to sustain a program, you need to have something that can measure its effectiveness. And so I would, again, once more encourage you to meet with Ms. Ross, check the program out. I know it's making a difference in the lives of those kids, and if anything, I may want to even look to increase the amount that we do in that program. But I wouldn't do that unless we had some solid evidence that the program has made its impact. So I think we should be receiving something shortly from them. I don't know if you have any additional information to add to that, Ms. Robinson.
I'd like to just say one thing. When I spoke to the people who run that program last year, they said they couldn't expand it, because you had asked about that last year, maybe doing it. They said they don't have any more personnel than what they have right now. There's no way they could expand it, because they're working with SAISD. It's not just our district. and they're pretty much tapped out. Now, maybe that's changed since last year, but Ms. Ross could certainly look into as well, but
Well,
that was the last I was told.
I appreciate you bringing that up. I mean, we are bound by realities, and if those realities mean that we cannot expand that program, then we simply can't. But I'm still sold on its impact at Metzger.
Mr. Elizondo,
Yes, ma'am.
does Metzger Middle School contribute to this 20,000?
No, that's something
Maybe
that
they
we,
should, since it's only at their school,
whatever the board would like to do,
out of their budget.
whatever the board would like to do.
How many years has this been going on? Is this the first year?
You know, as far as I know, and please don't, I'm not the certified expert on this, but based on my memory, we've at least had that program in place for at least 2 to 3 years.
There
But
should be data out there for
That-
them,
that's-
and we'd be able to see that.
Nancy, is there any data?
This is a campus program. The campus
Okay.
bought, like, all of our
Right,
campuses
right.
have
They bought it.
individual things that they go out and use their money for and bring to their campus in a variety of ways. This was something Metzger added. It was their program. I want to say 3 years, but I would need
Yeah,
to
I
confirm
think so.
that. At least
But
two.
It was requested by the board. It's not
To
on
pay
their,
for it last year. Not to add the program was here, it was a campus-based program, and the
Did they pay
request,
for it initially?
yes, until this year.
But I thought that was that it was paid by that company.
They donated
then-
some and they paid
Yeah,
some.
donated, whatever.
It
And then the
was-
campus had, and then they said, well, we'd like to really initiate.
It was kind of that, yes.
Well, I'd like to see the data and see, you know, how.
I think
Well,
that's
we have
realistic.
3 years or 2 years of data, let's see.
That should be.
Well, the
enough.
company
Yeah.
should have some data.
Yes.
Let's see if we can get some data.
All right,
Maybe Dr. Montoya, if you can call Ms.
Ms. Ross?
Yes,
Ross and say, hey,
and get
the
some
board would like to get-
specific
She
data.
can
I'll
come
call
next
her in the
Tuesday.
Okay,
morning.
Nancy in the morning.
I'll
then.
call her in the morning and
Okay.
request
Or
a
she can
report.
come next Tuesday and make a presentation.
Or I'll give her the option.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have
Yeah.
it for you then.
Good.
Done, Renee? Done? Jose?
Yes, sir.
Police Department, this funding, that's for the stipends for the dog.
What
and
page, sir?
everything. Page, well, it's 935, I think it's page 10. 935, Police Department, Dr. Montoya. Question is, we passed that for the stipends for the dog, that's in there too?
It's not in this budget, but it's in the payroll budget, so we
The
have it
what?
covered.
The payroll
Well, I take
budget.
that back. I take that back. We originally had put in the payroll budget, but it's in here. It's covered.
It's in here?
Yes, sir.
that- The stipends?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, good, thanks. Mr. Macias?
Yes, Mr. Elizondo.
Yes, sir.
My apologies for being late. It sounds like you dove right into it, and so hopefully my colleagues will let me know if this has already been discussed so that I don't have to repeat, and I can always ask questions offline. But you did touch upon the Princeton Review, the $200,000. I appreciate that being put up because, of course, I did question that at the last budget meeting. But this is I guess, in relation to expanding that program, and I believe Dr. Montoya or Ms. Robinson might be able to speak to that. Just help me clarify, I think the direction that we were going to take with this program for next year would be to leave it as is and evaluate it for one more year.
Yes,
Okay.
sir, that was Dr. Montoya's suggestion.
Sure, I remember
Because
that.
he's new and everybody's new, to let it sit one more year and then look at it.
Okay, and just to put that out there, we want to make sure that we're really utilizing these funds in the most impactful manner possible. One of my concerns with the program, again, just to put it on record, and if we can't make adjustments as minor as this, that would be, I think, helpful for this program. That's the fact that we cannot offer this program to individuals that cannot get an excuse out of their class. I mean, because they have to reconfigure their class schedules, they being students, have to reconfigure their class schedule in order to fit this in during one of their free periods. I would like to see this as a Saturday option at one of our campuses, either at Judson or Wagner or both, because they're both hosting the program. And so if that minor adjustment could be made in conjunction with this same dollar amount and some evaluation, we may see some improved results, because again, there are students that just cannot manipulate their schedule to attend this sort of a prep or review. and we're missing out on providing some service to those students.
No, and I think, Mr. Macias, you have a good point that a lot of our students, because of the number of classes they have, if you're trying to use that as part of their schedule, it sometimes can't be inserted in there. And by the end of the day, sometimes students don't want to, they've had 7 or 8 classes that day. So if we can open the door maybe for Saturday, and let's see what
We'll
we
look
need to
into
do to look at
Yeah,
that.
and of course, I can respect
Oh,
the dollar amount. I mean, I appreciate the evaluation, especially with Dr. Montoya having an opportunity to evaluate it as well. The only thing I would ask is that we find a way to make a Saturday work within that.
Since Ms. Barrow will still be here, she's going to look into that and what the possibilities are, okay?
I appreciate anybody that looks into it, but thank you, Ms. Robinson.
Would we also
Thank you,
be
Ms.
able to offer transportation? You know,
That's not something that I've.
well, I know it's
advocated.
something we have to consider, though, I mean, if we want, for the Princeton Review if we want to make it on a Saturday for,
Once
to
a
go
month.
to go to whatever school, Judson Wagner, I'm thinking maybe the early college if it's open,
Oh,
Give
I
them
hadn't.
a little,
I like that. I hadn't considered the transportation aspect of it.
but we got to think about that, so,
Yeah,
you know.
The most I thought, typically parental engagement would drop off
I
the kid,
understand
but
that, but
I like the bus. I think that's good.
Yeah, we'll have to look.
And just one more thing, because registration's already happened, we'll need to look and see if those classes are full now already, before we start moving, you know what I mean? So we'll need to check that as well.
I mean, this is for the fall, right? We're talking about if we do this,
Yes.
it'd be for the fall. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on these? Because if not, I'm going to keep moving, and you can definitely ask me more questions next time too, because we can definitely come back to it. We're not going to adopt till the 23rd, so we can still.
I do have a question, Mr. Elizondo.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Salyer? I don't know if you touched upon the consultant dollars that had requested some insight on, but when we look at this budget, I mean, there are a lot of codes that break down, and so were you able to put together a report on the consulting dollars
They're not.
for this year?
They're not in here. I do have that in a separate document
Mhm.
that I can review with you, and then we can share it with the rest of the board.
Because my thing, of course, is that I still feel that we've overspent in the consulting area, that we have a potential to save some money in that area. But as we're looking at these budgets, I'm almost interested to know what or how much of it is consulting fees, so help us then decide, why we are spending money there, or what seems to be the reason why we need to.
Sure.
And it's hard to tell when they're in these buckets.
Sure. I'll
where
tell you
those
what we'll do
consulting
for the next meeting on Tuesday next week.
Okay.
Is I'll put a report by department that is what they call their 6200 account, 6219,
Yes.
which will show you by department how much they're spending in that area, and then you can kind of get an idea as to how much each one of the departments is spending in that area.
And explain to me the difference between miscellaneous contracted services and contracted services and consulting fees. I mean, what do those look like? What are they?
What happens is that and I'll bring the definitions that TEA gives us, and so they tell us how to code each one of the different things. So you may have somebody who comes in and provides a consulting service, which they're going to come in and just do a review of a program and then make recommendations as to how you're going to improve that program. So they tell you use a particular object code, if you will, a particular budget code for that. Then they may say, well, if you're going to use another kind of individual to come in and provide services that maybe they're going to supplement what you're doing, speech therapy is a good example. Then they give us a different budget code that you have to use for that kind of service. And it all just depends on what services are being provided as to how they tell us that we have to code them. So I'll be happy to share with you the document that we share with the departments and the campuses that show us exactly if you're going to use this kind of service and you have to code it this way. And like I said, when we prepare that report, I'll try to see if we can break it out for a couple of different columns to kind of show you what's in each one of them, and what department is doing, how much money in each one of those categories.
So the difference between miscellaneous, contracted, and
What happens
contract-
with miscellaneous, it's exactly that. They'll tell you, like, if you're going to use these particular services, code them here, these particular services, code here. If it's not covered here, then throw them in this other bucket down here, which covers everything else. So I can bring you the examples of what it is. For instance, again, like a speech therapist person, it'll say, use a consulting code 6219 for that one, for example. And if it's gonna be a contracted maintenance and repair, like you're gonna hire somebody to come and do asphalt work, it'll say use 6249 for that particular code. And when you look at all the codes, if whatever it is you're trying to do, I'm trying to think of an example of one that we use, and I think like some of the people that we use, like some of the games, like the officials that we use, they fall into that miscellaneous category, where they don't fit one of the other categories, so you just dump them in the 6249 because they're not specifically listed on the other ones. But I can give you, I'll give you that as a definition so you can kind of look at them, and maybe you can determine from that what it is that you're really looking for.
And so that brings up the same point of before, the consulting dollars. I don't see where they are in this budget breakdown like
Right.
this. We see that on the Excel sheet that you provided. So now the miscellaneous accounts and where, I don't know if they would fit, they would obviously fit in here as well, right? I mean, they'd
Sure.
be in part of this.
Sure.
But I don't know what department is spending a lot
Right.
in miscellaneous and
Sure.
which one is not. And I mean, obviously, we need referees at the game, but
Sure.
just back to the whole idea of trying to really pinpoint where we may be
Sure.
spending more.
In the category that you're talking about, there are 4 different areas that are used. And so, like I said, for the next meeting, we'll provide a similar report to this with those 4 columns only. That'll show you how much money each one of them is spending in those particular categories. So you can see by department what they're spending in each one of those categories. So it'll give you a better idea.
Okay.
And if that, once you look at that, if that's not exactly fitting your needs, you can tell us and we can try to drill down a little bit more to kind of cover and answer your question.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
No, Mr. Flores first.
Mr. Elizondo, can you put like footnotes on this, like way we do on our financials, to explain we just see a 700,000, then you put your footnotes and telling us?
I can, but that's going to be a lot to put on here, and I don't know that it'll be very legible when it's all said and done. I mean, it's going to take a lot of effort to do that, and I don't want that to sound wrong. Not that we mind the work. It's just going to be what are we going to explain, what are we not going to explain, because I'm afraid that we're always going to miss something, and that you're going to say, well, you
But
didn't
when we
explain that,
do
you
our
didn't explain that.
financials on a monthly basis.
Sure.
You will put those footnotes for those expenditures.
Oh, definitely.
They're under 6,200 or
Oh,
6249.
most definitely. Those, and I'm sorry,
Something
I'm
like
sorry, I
that.
misunderstood what you were asking me.
Yeah.
In
On
our
this
monthly
one, I
fin-
like the idea of coming out with a different
Report.
spreadsheet just for those expenditures. But
For a budget.
as we go forward into this, as far as what we are spending, and instead of just seeing that $600,000, you give us a
Yeah.
breakdown.
And we do, and that's
Yeah.
what I do right now, right? And if you look at the monthly financials, and you know what, I only do it for the general operating fund, because that's where the bulk of it comes from.
Right.
In there, and there's the very last page of the general operating fund, it has it by category. It'll say like miscellaneous revenue, these are the kind of the major highlights that are in here. And then it'll have utility, or it'll say 6200s, and by category, it'll say these are consultants and how much we're spending, if they're special ed consultants, the big items are in there. I don't go and cover every single one of them, but anything that's over like $50,000, $25,000, I pick the largest ones for that month, and so anything that hits about this much, I'm gonna itemize them out, because y'all requested that a long time ago. So it'll show you what it is in that particular report. But we can, like I said, let us do this for the next meeting. Y'all can look at it, and if you need more information, we can definitely go through and try to provide what you're looking for.
And you will, on that, you will have the budget, previous budget and everything just like this?
Let me see what I can do.
Okay, well, I understand. that
It's just
they're
gonna get
lumped into
really,
the
really
numbers.
tiny by the time if we start
Right.
adding all those numbers, and you're not
Right, I
gonna be able to see
understand they're
it.
lumped into these numbers, but it really doesn't do much analysis good if you can't see what you're comparing to.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, and I didn't really know if you were looking for a comparison or just how much money are they spending on those
Well,
particular
I
items.
believe Mr. Macias is looking for a comparison to see where we're spending it and what's what. Right, Jose? I don't want to
Yeah.
speak for you.
No, you're absolutely on
Yeah.
point.
Okay.
We'll see what we can come up with.
All right, thank you.
I was just gonna say to Mr. Elizondo that, yes, that would be perfect next week. We're gonna, on next Tuesday, I think.
Yes, sir.
That would be great on those items that they were discussing, so we can see
Sure.
the expenditures on, like he said, miscellaneous and special ed or whatever.
Sure.
And I think that would be great for us, because at that time, I might have some questions, okay?
Okay. Mhm.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any more.
Yeah, Mr. Sellier, I have. And just for my own information, once we pass this budget, then it's good you guys, administration moves forward with implementing implementing the budget. But I do see some on the Excel sheet for consulting services, like, say, 39,600, and we'll find out exactly where that is. But that 39.6 would already be built into the budget, so you wouldn't have to come to the board for any of that. It's been approved already in this round.
Depends.
Right, okay, depends.
If that item was budgeted during this original budget time, yes, it would be included here.
Yeah.
However, for some reason during the year, somebody says, hey, I need to do X, Y, Z, and we didn't budget for that, then it would come to the board first with a budget amendment to see if y'all would approve it, and then if you did, then we'd go forward with that. So that particular item you're looking at, the 39.6, I don't know if that was in their original budget, or if we had an amendment throughout the year that was for that item. I'd have to know what it was, so I can tell you.
Yeah, it's, and again, there's more numbers than I can deal with, but certainly some rationale on that would be helpful. Just the bigger items, I'm just always kind of curious about that.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, I'm gonna move right along unless somebody else stops me. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next page and let me see what this is on here. The next page is, all right. The next page that's on here, and I think it's y'all's page number 14, are the staffing requests for new staff and changes for next school year. The largest, as I spoke about it a little bit earlier, the largest amount of money is that $1.7 million that you see on this sheet. I hate to do that because I'm going to lose it. But what it really, that $1.7 million encompasses is a new principal, and there's several columns in here, and if you look at the column nearest to your, second column to your right-hand side, it says priority level. And we're really looking only to fund the items that are priority level 1. And so if you see a 2 or 3, that means we've kind of said, well, that's not really as critical right now. We're waiting to wait a little bit later to do that, maybe next year if it becomes more important. So what you're looking at here that make up that $1.7 million, again, as I reviewed a little bit earlier, was we're looking for a principal for the new school for Evans Road High School for next year, a secretary for that school. We're looking for 15 new teaching positions for increased enrollment at the elementary schools, 6 new teaching positions for enrollment at the middle school level, 5 new teaching positions at the high school level, and we're also looking at for a school counselor for the JSTEM program. We're going into the next year of that JSTEM program. There's more students there, and they're requiring that we have a counselor there for that program. Yes, sir.
Are we still using the personnel allocation model to figure out what we have and what we need?
Yes, sir, for the most part. The only time that we've kind of gotten away from that is when there has been a special request throughout the year. Like, for instance, this past year, there was a request for counselors, and so we got away from that staffing allocation when that happened.
Are
but
we,
other than that, yes.
when we have our allocation, I think we need to do something with the counselors at the elementary level, because sometimes you have a bigger campus that only has one counselor where you have the different ones. I think we need to look at that the way we look at the assistant principals at the middle schools, just because, those counselors have a lot on their plate at the elementary level, just as much as secondaries.
Yes, sir. You're right. And the same thing for the assistant, you were saying assistant principals, and I thought they were going to go in that direction as well.
No.
At the elementary schools as well, when, we have the same number of assistant principals regardless of the size of the elementary school. So yes, we can definitely look at that. Of course, all it is it's money, right?
I understand, but I'd really like to look at that.
But we definitely can.
I mean, we've got to look at what we're doing with
Sure.
So, Mr. Floyd, are you saying make sure that they have at least one counselor? Is that what you're saying? The elementaries? Oh, yes. Oh, I agree. Oh, yes. Yes. Or make it a 1.5, or a half that could go to 2 campuses. Oh, okay. Oh, yes. I agree with you on that. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. But we do have, just to make sure clear, we do have at least one counselor at every elementary school.
We do, and there is a proposal that came forward last year, and we can certainly bring it back to split a second counselor at some of the very big elementaries.
We're good? Yes, sir.
But sometimes that doesn't work, just, if they're not there all the time working with those kids. It's a tough balancing act, and I understand that. So Yeah, we just have to look at that, at the allocation, and see what we're looking to do there, and move forward with that. Thank you.
And you know, in relation to that, Mr. Flores, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. None of us do. But as we've kind of, Dr. Montoya kind of mentioned before, and we've discussed, that there is that lawsuit against the state for the funding, and we think that something is going to happen, you know, in probably, if not in the fall, but in the spring, when the judge comes back and decides what he's going to ask legislators to do. And that may entail them having a special session next summer, which may give us a little more money. And if that happens, then maybe we can look definitely at that time, if not before, to see if there are some other positions that we would like to add to the school district to better support our kiddos. All right, well, I'm going to continue on this sheet. In case anybody else has any other questions, just let me know.
Mr. Elizondo.
Yes, sir.
Just on this first tier, this 1.7 million.
Yes, sir.
And somebody may have already asked, so please forgive this, but do we get funding from the state for this?
Yes, sir.
Like the new teachers, we would, right?
Yes, sir. When we have increased student enrollment, we generate more average daily attendance, and that's how the state funds that. Just for the regular, plus if there are special needs, like special education, or anything, they give us more money for those. But yes, to answer your question in short, we do receive more money.
And so is there's an anticipated or forecasted amount of what that revenue would look like, correct?
Based on the number of ADA, yes, sir.
Okay, so would we be able then to figure out what revenue stream we would be? I mean, we have the allocation expenditure, but what the potential revenue would be for a new principal based on the ADA or new teachers? Is that data something that can be supplied to the board?
Sure. I mean, and typically what happens is every student that we have, average daily attendance kiddo, every ADA one, it's about $5,200 per year, just for the regular block. So if we know how many kiddos we have enrolled, then we usually take it times a rate of 94.6% to come up with the ADA number, multiply it times 5,200, and say that's about how much we receive on an annual basis for that one student.
So am I asking something crazy to add revenue on this as well?
Well, no, but we do have that in when we did the budget summaries a little while ago. It shows you the revenue we're getting from the state as a whole, not by student.
Okay.
Or by one of these. So it does show you there in summary how much we're going to receive. And when we're looking at the budget as a whole, we look at all the expenses and all the revenues to come up with, you know, how much can we afford to do and where are we going to end up bottom line once we do all this. And that includes, of course, forecasting the increased enrollment on both the revenue and the expense side.
I guess what I'm eventually hoping to see is that this 1.746 will be washed out by the incoming revenue that would.
It won't be washed by the state alone, because we also receive support from our local taxpayers in the form of taxes. So it takes both sources to be able to support this. If we just looked at 5 teaching positions and said, hey, you know, they're going to have 20 kids per class and multiplied it out, we can definitely figure that, but it's probably not going to be sufficient to cover this because the local taxes are also a key element in determining and funding all of our positions for the district. That's why we get 60-some% from local taxpayers and 40-something% from the state.
So when you bring this recommendation for, say, for example, middle school, 6 new teaching positions for middle schools,
6.
Do we know where those 6 will be allocated to?
Yes, we do. Mr. Fields works on allocation, on the projections for the students for the next school year for by campus. And then based on that, we know how many kids they have right now, how many teachers are allocated right now, what their allocation is for next year, and we know that there's an increase at one school, you know, for maybe one teacher, another one maybe have 2 teachers, and things like that, and that's how we come up with a total.
Well, I have an idea. We know that at some middle schools, they require more support just based on the socioeconomic factors. The students, for example, Kirby, they may benefit from an additional 2 teachers. So I don't know if that's been sort of played out or if all the schools are just going to get 2 each. I mean, so sure. I was hoping that there might be some rationale to looking at that.
Let me kind of explain how that works. What we're looking at here are the basic allocations just to do the core subjects and make sure that all those areas are covered. And this is funding from what we call the general operating fund, just Fund 199 straight. Those schools that have a higher need because of their socioeconomic or whatever, more at-risk students for whatever reason, there are other funding sources that they're also provided supplemental above and beyond this. So those schools that receive Title I funds, if they're eligible for Title I, to be a Title I campus, and they're used for additional staffing units, they receive compensatory education funds and they're used for additional staffing units to make sure that we give them more support. And the way that those funds are allocated to the schools are based exactly on what you said. The higher the need, the higher allocation they're going to receive to make sure that they can afford to get more staffing units for those kiddos.
Okay.
So a school that is like what he's talking about, you don't necessarily need to send a teacher to that school because they have the allocation from the state
It's,
for being a title school.
it's not really from the state, because what happens is they give us, the school district, the bulk of money, like, let's say $3 or $4 million, whatever it is, Title I money, and then we allocate that money to our schools based on their need. And that's based on percentages of low and social, or at-risk students. And so we give them that money, so if we have a school like, that's not a title campus, obviously they get nothing. And then we have the highest need, and they're gonna get a little bit more than everybody else. Okay. Continue on. All right. On this same sheet, once we get past that $1.7 million, you see another item there for another unit for $80,000 estimated. That include, and all these numbers include benefits as well. And that is for a language arts, foreign language arts specialist that we're needing to add to the school district. Continue on to the next area. We have a request there for the police department to add another paraprofessional in that department to help with the dispatch. Right now, the secretary for a while has been doing both the clerk and dispatch services, and we really need to break those apart. There was one time a while back when we did have two positions, and one of them was eliminated years ago, and we're trying to get that back to where it should be. I'm sorry, say that again?
So I thought police department was under Dr. Montoya, not operations. Is that just an accounting thing?
The police chief is definitely by law under the supervision of the superintendent, or
Okay.
has to have direct report to the superintendent. But still, in the way in our school district it works, Mr. Fields still assists with the other portion
Other
of
stuff.
running that
Okay.
department.
Okay.
But we just want to make sure that the police, and of
Make sure
course,
we're counting.
Dr. Montoya can tell any one of us, what
Okay.
needs to happen, but.
Got it.
Then there's also another position there for the maintenance department. We need a custodial equipment repair technician. We looked at how much money we were spending on repairing equipment and decided that it's more beneficial, cost effective for us to have our own staff doing that instead of contracting those services out. So that's what that is. And we're spending above that money already on repairing equipment.
Now, would that be something I would see on miscellaneous contracted services in terms of the maintenance?
You bet.
And that $35,633, am I to assume that that would be the wages for that position?
It's benefits, wages and benefits.
Okay, so there wouldn't be, like, I know there's some positions where we pay them out of two different buckets. This would be,
That's
this
it,
would be it.
total. Yes, sir.
And it's competitive, I assume? For
Yes, sir. When they
Okay.
developed that, yes, we feel like it is a competitive rate.
Thank you.
You bet. The next item on here is for the purchasing department. When we had the budget cuts, I guess 3 or 4 years ago, time runs together, we eliminated this position. And so we're asking to see if we can reinstitute that position for that department. I keep going. If you have questions, please stop me.
Now, is the purchasing specialist a paraprofessional?
Yes.
And I guess what's the current, we don't have that position now, so how are we accomplishing this right now?
By people putting in a lot of extra time. There's
Extra time by who, other paraprofessionals or by administration?
The director of purchasing is putting in a lot of hours, and the other professional staff, some as well. But beyond that, some things are starting being looked at as close as they should be. Some of the things are being pushed off to the campuses where we should be giving them more support and identifying where they should be buying some of their items. We're asking them to do it. And it's just not the smart thing to do because they're not looking, they're not as familiar with the vendors that are giving certain price breaks and stuff where we are. And so it just is, the position will probably pay for itself with us just getting those discounts that sometimes we're overlooking as we're ordering right now and making sure that we get the best.
Give me an example of something that we've empowered the school to purchase rather than the administration doing it.
Well, they're not purchasing it, but when they call us and say, hey, we need to buy, I I don't know, let me see. Oh, I'll give you one for the departments. They'll say, we need to buy a car, we need to buy cars. And we'll say, okay, well, you need to go out and contact some vendors and get some quotes for us. Well, that's really something that we should be doing. No, we shouldn't be asking the departments to go get quotes for vehicles. And right now, they're having to do that. And so that's why we're saying we really want to bring that back, and we need to provide that support for them, so they're not wasting time, but taking their time on doing that instead of really operating their departments and doing what they're supposed to be doing, instead of having us do the procurement piece for things like that.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Getting back on the example you're using for vehicles,
Yes, sir.
will that, don't we have a vehicle, isn't that under transportation as far as when we're getting rid of vehicles and everything like that?
Really, transportation, their task in the past has been mostly to ensure that they're taking care of the transportation vehicles, which mostly are the buses.
So we don't have, so they're not doing just vehicles?
No.
Just all the maintenance vehicles and all that?
Right. Typically, the maintenance department takes care of their white fleet. If they need to order something, they are going out and trying to get prices. Child nutrition is getting their own prices. Like I said, we really would like to support them more with that, because we really would like to do that part for them. But right now, and we used to.
Would this person be able to set up the schedule as far as, okay, we're going to turn these over every 5 years or every 80,000 miles or something?
Not necessarily that individual, but what it will do, it'll free, not that they can't, we definitely can if we train them and give them the tools to do it. But it may be something more that maybe the director will do, and some of the things that he's doing right now that really a paraprofessional could be doing, that they'll just change a little bit of their responsibilities to free him up to do some of those other things that, and working on replacement schedules with the departments and things like that.
I think a district our size, they need the vehicle, timeline as far as when we're.
And we do have
changing.
it for the buses, but we don't have it
Right,
for all
I'm
the
talking about
ones.
all the vehicles.
Sure.
We have a lot of vehicles.
Maintenance has
Yeah,
a
Sure.
replacement budget. I know you presented to us.
yeah.
When they do, in child nutrition, child nutrition is really good. They have their own and they're able to pay for their own. So, and sometimes what happens with those Mr. Flores is that they have their schedule, and then we get into some budget crunches sometimes, and we kind of like get behind the year or two, and then we have to catch up again. But we'll definitely share those with you throughout the year, so you can kind of see where we're at.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Okay, I'm going to move on to the technology department. There are 2 positions that are being requested there. The first one is a desktop technician, and they are short in that area. We are currently using some contracted support to come in and help. I think they hire usually 2 or 3 positions, maybe more, at the beginning of the year and throughout the year to help maintain those computers. We've increased the number of computers and just all hardware throughout the district over the years, and we've actually cut back on some technicians, and so we're trying to get one of them back. It was actually a request for more, but this year we said, we'll try to do one and see if that works or helps a little bit even. And the next job that's on there is a business systems analyst. We have one individual right now that oversees the finance system and HR, all that part of it. And it kind of lists on here what they are: the HR, PEMS, finance, payroll, tax office systems, purchasing. And we really want to train somebody else to be to know those systems as well. It's risky the way we have it right now, that we only have one individual doing that. And if for some reason we were to lose that person, these are systems that really need a lot of attention as far as assisting people and how to access the data that they need sometimes, and supporting those systems. And it is just not smart the way we're doing it. It's not. It'd be better if we had somebody else to help with that, to learn and support our departments with those systems. And that other individual who's currently doing that, he also is responsible for doing a lot of other operations as well, a lot of other things as well. So we really need to get somebody back and train him on these systems so they can make sure that we're covered in case something were to happen to him. I'm going to keep going. The next items you see here, they're kind of in a brownish color, and those are priority 2. I'm really not going to cover those unless you have questions about them. We're not suggesting funding those out of this current year's budget. Those will be positions that maybe come back next year, or even mid-year if we feel like there's sufficient money to do that. But right now we have them on the list. We debated whether to show them to y'all or not, but sometimes, it's one of those where we don't know what the safe route is or what the best route is, and so we felt like we're just going to show you what was requested. That way you see it and you're aware of it, and just let you know that we're not funding those at this particular time. We're not requesting them to be funded. There's also priority 3, a little bit further down, and that just means that really was way down on the list.
Any questions for Mr. Olson?
And I was gonna say, on the next page too, there's another section that talks about child nutrition, and there's a few reclassification of positions which are smaller amounts of money. And then on the last page, there's the child nutrition program, which is requesting several positions, but they're funding those, of course, out of their child nutrition budget.
I have, I'm sorry, you finished?
Yes, sir, go ahead, I'm sorry.
On page 16, you didn't do the priority ones there? Payroll and guidance and counseling, you have two priority ones there.
Let me back up, yes, sir. Those are,
Payroll clerk, two, and secretary for guidance and counseling.
yes, sir. Again, those are reclassifications. These are not new positions. We're just asking to increase their pay a little bit to more be aligned with the responsibilities that they have now because we've changed what they're doing. In the payroll area, for instance, we used to have the payroll clerk one or payroll one, and that person really functioned more of a receptionist at that department and did some minimal work. But now with everything that we're moving everything to automation, the old pink sheets, Mr. Salinas, that we used to talk about, automating the pink sheets kind of thing and doing now the time management system that's coming on. Their roles are completely changing, and we need to maintain these people at a little bit higher level, skill level. And so we have some good people in there now that can do the jobs, and so we're just looking to make sure that we can keep them and not that they don't move on somewhere else. The one for guidance and counseling?
On the next one that I have is on the maintenance reclassify, but you put a priority level 2, and it says here reclassify from energy management tech pay grade 5 to energy control tech pay grade 9. This would eliminate contracting services out and allow for in-house repairs. I would like, if my colleagues are okay with it, maybe to put this in the budget for priority 1. If we're already contracting and paying money out, I would like to make it a priority level 1, if it's okay with Dr. Montoya, and see if they can reclassify that.
And again, Mr. Salinas, if as a group, if the board supports that and it is important, it probably would be better if it was a priority 1.
Should it saved us money last summer? The energy, the control?
I don't, Mr. Young, you want to come up for a second so you can?
It's a different.
You know what I'm talking about, Mr. Field?
What was the question?
Is this the position that saved money last summer?
No, this is a position that is currently in place. It's a grade paid 5 position. And that position isn't qualified to do some of the programming and the controls that we need that we'll contract out otherwise. So as a grade 5, we're not able to get the position of a person who can really do those types of functions. So we have to contract those out. So that contract cost amount, we want to reduce that by raising this to a pay grade 9 and get a qualified person in it so we can do it in-house.
Is this like Johnson Controls?
Johnson Controls, ALC, Allerton, preventive maintenance.
Okay.
We have about millions of dollars worth of controls in the district, and we really don't have anybody in-house who's managing that.
Okay,
So,
okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wouldn't it be better to retrain the person in there
Dr.
and just
Montoya.
upgrade him?
uh,
And go out and get another person?
what we'd want, if that position became a 9 and
Yeah.
that person was willing to do that, absolutely. We'd want to promote that to bring that person up to that position. We'd always want to do
We
that
want to
first.
promote within.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Macias? You done, Mr. Salinas? You done?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, Mr. Elizondo, as I'm looking at your priority 1, 2, and 3, I mean, obviously, we did see maintenance as one of the priority 1s and custodial equipment repair technician. But I did notice last year that we were contracting maintenance services, cutting lawns and so on. And I'm assuming that that would be on the contracted services of the budget. I don't see a request for personnel in that area, so are we still going to contract those services?
Mr. Yockley, would you come back? Because I think they did that as a pilot last year, but let me kind of, let him.
The contract mowing was just a pilot program to just see how well contracting mowing would. So we did a few campuses to see how, if they'd do a good job and because during the raining seasons, the demand it rises and then it goes down. So it's kind of something we'd use as a cushion whenever like the period that we're in right now, where we're fighting everything we can. Because when it rains, you can't mow, and then the grass grows twice as fast as what it does. So it was a cushion to do that as a pilot. We are not doing that this year.
So am I to assume it wasn't a successful pilot?
I feel like it is a successful pilot. I would like to propose to do some more campuses if we could, but we just didn't propose that this year.
Okay, so what's going to happen now? We won't have that pilot program. There's not a recommendation for personnel. So how is that going to be taken care of? Are we going to have messier campuses because we don't have that service?
Currently, the personnel that we do have covers every campus that we do have. The only thing that we will fluctuate in is during heavy rain periods like what we had. For the last 8 years, we really haven't had what we're experiencing right now, so we really didn't have the need to go after that.
And I'm not saying this is good, bad, or ugly, but when I hear that, if our personnel can already handle it, I'm wondering why we piloted anything. If they're capable of handling it going forward, and we paid a lot of money for miscellaneous contracted services, I wonder if we needed it. I mean, it's rhetorical. You don't have to answer that.
Yes.
But basically, that's just a thought that's going through my mind. And I guess a question you can respond to would be, do we offer our maintenance employees overtime for trying to take care of some of the needs in the district?
Yes and yes. It's a feast or famine, Mr. Macias. If, like he just explained, if there's 2 weeks of rain, everybody needs a yard cut. So now we need to contract out to get help to get that done. And we work our maintenance staff until 7, 8 o'clock at night if there's visibility out there. And we pay them overtime. But on a routine basis to set up a company that comes in routinely, and that's not the case throughout the summer when we're on a drought, well, we can handle it at that point. But we're just asking for assistance to go out and do contracting when we need it, just opposed to on a routine basis.
And I guess my last question would be, is overtime less costly than acquiring this miscellaneous contracted service?
Overtime less costly when we're not doing it on a routine basis, but only when we need it.
So, okay, so it's yes or no? Overtime is beneficial than?
Overtime,
Over
it's
the-
more beneficial not to contract out on a
Okay.
consistent basis, only when we need them.
All right, thank you.
I have a question.
Mr. Salinas?
Coming back to, I wanted to tell Mr. Macias, I don't think we have hired more maintenance people, but yet we added Rolling Meadows Elementary, and we just added Copperfield. So that's more schools that have been added for these maintenance people. So I'm in agreement. If we need to do some of the contracting out when we need it, like Mr. Fields was saying, I don't have a problem with that. I'd rather our employees get the money, even though it's overtime, and sometimes we talk about we're spending too much in overtime. For our employees, I don't mind it, so I'm glad. Now, coming back to that priority, we're gonna make that a priority one. I don't know how that works. Dr. Montoya said it would be recommended a priority one on that maintenance, reclassification of that maintenance energy controls technician.
Yeah, and I think we can do that for the next budget meeting. We just change, obviously, the number and hope the board approves that in the end, so.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Salas.
Anyone else?
Okay, I'm moving on.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Lalo.
Again, the last page on here was Child Nutrition Fund. Again, they're going to fund these increases they're requesting, so we went ahead and left them all as priority one, so we could do that. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next section. Just wanted to share this with you. This is the advertisement that goes in the newspaper, notifying our citizens as to what, it's required by law. It's called Truth in Taxation, and it notifies our citizens as to what it is that we're doing with as far as the school district, as far as how much money we're collecting, things like that. Here in the middle section, you'll see that there's a box that's called bonded indebtedness. And Mr. Sawyer, this is a question you had earlier about how much we have in outstanding bonds. So in outstanding principal, we have $422,714,000 and change for our outstanding bond indebtedness. And the box right beneath that, it kind of shows at the very, where it says comparison of proposed rates with last year's rates. At the bottom, it shows that the proposed rate is $1.04 for the M&O fund and 0.38 cents for the INS fund, which is what I mentioned earlier when we were looking at those budget summaries. Just wanted to show you this. It's supposed to be in the paper this week. Okay, that's that for that presentation. Does anybody have any questions about that? Any of this stuff I covered? All right, I'm going to share something else with y'all just to kind of let you know this is coming, and I kind of had mentioned this before. If I can get this mouse to work. There we go. We had a health insurance, totally different subject, related to the budget though. We had a health insurance committee meeting yesterday at 10:30 in the morning. And the reason we did that is because we've been visiting with our health insurance group for a little while as to what we're kind of looking for, oops, wrong way, for health insurance for next year. And, okay, what's going on here? And I want to kind of share some information with you and kind of see what the consensus of the board is, although we're not voting on anything tonight. This chart that I put up here, there's some information that says this year up here, and I'm sorry, I was kind of debating whether to present this to you all tonight or not, but I thought I wanted to at the last minute here. So I penciled some things in instead of printing them out nicely for y'all. But there's a column here that says this year, and as a matter of fact, here's some if you want to. And what this information shows you is that on this particular column where it says monthly employee contribution, you all know that we're paying $300 for our health insurance right now for our employees. And then it kind of shows in the next column, which says current monthly employee contribution, it shows what the employees are contributing for health insurance. And these top numbers up here are for what we call the high plan, our high insurance plan. And it's broken down by like employee only, employee and children, employee and spouse, employee and family. And then the next section down here is the mid plan that we call, and then the bottom one is the low plan. And the low plan, if you'll see up here, you know, there's 25. The employees pay $25 a month, and next to it, it tells you how many people we have participating in each one of those programs. Well, we have the bulk of our employees purchase that particular program. 1,446 people buy the employee only low coverage insurance, low plan, and so. I wanted to share this with you because, and there's other information as to how much total money, and if you look at the bottom here where I have total premiums for that column, it shows you really that on an annual basis, our district is paying between what we contribute to the health insurance program and what the employees pay, about $13.5 million a year is what the district and employees pay for health insurance. Now, if we look at the column next to it, or the first column where it says, or the section next to it where it says next year above it, it shows a monthly employer contribution of $355. Again, a minute ago, remember I said right now we're paying $300 currently. That one shows a $355 contribution. I'm going to discuss that in just a second. And what we're proposing is this. Right now we have what we call an HIB program. And what the HIB program is, all of our employees are offered health insurance. Our full-time employees, everybody who qualifies is offered health insurance. So some employees obviously select go with the low plan, some go with the mid plan, some go with the high plan, depending on what kind of coverage they want, what they can afford, and what have you. But we have a lot of employees, and back on the section where it says this year, at the very bottom, it says there's $150 under monthly employer contribution, and there's under participants, it says 792. So we have 792 employees currently that do not buy health insurance from us. They buy this HIB plan. And what this HIB plan is, when you're hospitalized, you get $100 per day that you're in the hospital. Now, the reason those folks don't buy insurance from us is because the majority of them are insured with their spouse somewhere else. So their spouse, they're either military or they work for CPS. They work somewhere else where they have a better insurance program or what have you, and they decided that they don't want to buy it from us. So we offer this as an alternate to that. Now, the reason we do that is because, or the reason for many years, we wanted to make sure that every employee was being offered something and that we were paying for something for every employee. And What we're proposing is to do away with that particular HIB program. And at the next meeting, I'll bring back a little bit of more information as to how much they paid in claims, so you can see that even though we're paying, if you look at the total annual contribution here, and this is totally paid by the school district, we're paying about $1.4 million for that plan annually. And when we come back and look at the claims that they've paid out, you're going to see that they're minimal. I mean, like nothing compared to that $1.4 million. And the number of claims they pay, the number of people, is almost nothing as well. But I'm going to show you a trend for 5 years as to how that's happening. Because what we want to do, right now when we look at our health insurance program for the Judson School District and we look at other school districts' programs, many school districts do not offer that HIB program. So when you're looking at our annual monthly contribution, you're looking at $300 for us, for our employees. And when you look at other school districts, they have a higher contribution towards their health insurance than we offer. Well, what we want to do is take that $1.4 million that we're currently paying for the HIB program and redistribute those funds to all of our employees that are really participating in buying health insurance from us. So it's not going to cost us any additional money. But what we're going to do, instead of paying $300 per employee, we're going to pay $355 per employee. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. The insurance company, when they look at these programs, they look at them by plan, low, mid, high, HIB. But really at the very end, they don't really care. All they want to know is bottom line, how did Judson do as a whole group? So they look at all the programs, including the HIB program, and say, okay, how much money did Judson contribute towards us, and how much money did we pay towards their entire group? So when we bring that amount, when we get rid of the HIB program, and we bring the contribution up to $355, at the bottom there's a column, there's a number that says 13.281 million. So what we're doing is, we're trying to get back to that $13.5 million, and there's a little bit of a difference there. And we visited with the insurance company, and they said, hey, that's okay. If you want to drop the HIB program, that's fine with us. You can do that. You can take those monies and redistribute them back as an employer contribution. But the amount the employees pay is not going to change. It's still going to be the same amount that they paid this past year. It's going to stay the same. So what they're really saying is, yes, you can bring that $355, but the overall cost for each line item is going to be a little bit higher, but the employee cost is going to be exactly the same. Okay, did y'all capture that a little bit? So so when somebody looks at, an employee looks at our school district and says, hey, do I want to work for Judson? And if health insurance is important to them, and they want to look at the contribution that they're going to receive from the employer, they're going to say, you know what, Judson's paying $355 towards their health insurance. And that's going to be very competitive with what the rest of the districts are doing. And in some cases, a lot more competitive than what some of the other districts are doing.
And
Yes, sir.
we're going to be going out for bids again, right? RFQ this year?
No, let me kind of explain that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So one of the reasons I'm gonna go show you another slide here in just a minute. So what we're asking is for the board to say it's okay for us to not offer the HIB program for those employees that don't want to buy health insurance. In lieu of doing that, because we don't want to take a benefit away from them and not give them anything, because I don't, we just want to still offer them something. So I have a few little asterisks down here at the bottom. The first asterisk just says that we want to eliminate the mid-plan for our health insurance program. We ran the numbers, and all this has been flushed through and gone through with the insurance committee, and they've said, yes, they're fully in agreement with doing all of this. We looked at the numbers as to how much it costs to buy the mid-plan, and we did some examples with them about if you go to the doctor X number of times or have this kind of operation or whatever, our mid-plan is really the worst health insurance plan that you can buy out of all three of ours that we have, because it costs you more when you can look at how much you're paying in monthly premiums, plus what you're paying when you go visit the doctor in the hospital. If you do a little scenario and keep them constant between the three programs, the mid-plan is the worst plan. And when we started looking at it with the insurance company, we said we'd just like to eliminate that, because our employees, unfortunately, are not really running any numbers. They're just saying, well, I don't want to buy the low plan, and I really can't afford the high plan, so I'm just going to go middle of the road and buy the mid plan. But really, it's doing more damage to them than help, because it's really costing them more. And if you go back up to the chart up here and see how many employees are buying that mid plan, you can see that 46 employees are buying the employee-only coverage. There's 5 employees that are buying the employee, I think it's employee and spouse, and then the employee and children, 18 employees, and then 4 employees are buying employee and family. So those folks are gonna either be moving to the high or the low plan, whatever they think is best for them. But that's kind of what I wanted to share with you because we really would like to do that. And the third asterisk that's down here talks about, for those folks that are not buying our health insurance and currently buying the HIB program, that instead of doing that, that we offer them a life insurance policy for maybe like up to $50,000, because that's the most that the law will allow us to do. We're gonna get quotes to see how much that would cost, and we know it's gonna be very reasonable to do that, but of course, we'll bring back to the board and show you how much that's gonna be so y'all can see that. And we're doing different levels, so you can see what it would be at 40,000 and 30,000 and 50,000 to see what we would like to offer. Now, if y'all say we don't want to offer any of it, that's fine as well, but we still felt like we wanted to offer something to them, especially since we're taking that HIB benefit away from them. So I'm gonna go to the next slide, if that's okay. And the next one, I just wanted to show you your question about every year, what happens to Mr. Salinas when you're asking about going out for bid? We go back to the insurance company every year and we say, hey, give us renewal rates. If we keep the program as exactly like we have it right now, what are the rates going to be? Well, and every year they come back with a huge rate increase and we say, yeah, you're crazy. We're not going to do that. We're going to go out and do an RFP. And we'll go out and do the RFP, and typically we end up with the same insurance company. But at least we went out and checked the market to see what the heck, what everybody else is willing to do. Well, this year, when we went out to the insurance company and we said, hey, can you give us a renewal for next year for our health insurance? And we're thinking about doing away with this HIB program. And we want to see what it would cost if we kind of did a little bit better benefits for our employees. So if you look at the blue ones, the blue columns that are on the sheet, the low PPO is what we currently have, and then there's a high, it says current on next to it, and they're in blue. And the pinkish, reddish, whatever color you want to call that, is what we kind of asked them to do. So on the low plan, we asked them to make a little bit better coverage. So the deductible, what our employees currently have is $5,000. We asked them to lower it to $4,000. And our co-insurance, it was a 70-30 share. We asked for an 80-20 share. And the office visit, the co-pays, you used to pay $40 to see your regular doctor. And if you wanted to go see a specialist, you paid $55. So we told them we wanted to stay the same. We wanted to be 40 for both, regardless if it's a regular or a specialist. And so our insurance agent went out, and they did a really good job. I want to really commend them because they went out to the insurance company and talked to them about this, and Blue Cross Blue Shield came back and said, you know what? With the changes you all are talking about, we'll offer you the same, the better benefits that you're asking for, and no rate increase. So we'll maintain the same cost that you're paying right now. Your employees will not have to pay any more money for the plan for next year. So what we would like to do, again, we ran this by the insurance committee, and they all said yes. But of course, we told them they're advisory. We need to come to the board, get board's opinion, and or tell guidance really. And we would like to not bid out health insurance for next year. We would like to just continue this new proposal that they're giving us with the improved benefits for the low plan. And the high plan is staying exactly the same as it is this year, and it's going to be at the same rates that we had this year. But the only thing is that we are going to eliminate the HIB program and use those monies to increase our employer contributions towards these programs. So I just want to get a little bit of feedback from y'all to see what you all think. Thumbs up, thumbs down, so we can move forward.
For the employees,
Nope, same cost.
and an increase every year.
Oh, I can't tell you how. I can't tell you how excited the committee members were when we shared the information with them, especially as we were hearing from other school districts what they're getting back. We were just surprised that because we thought, well, we're going to ask, and we know we're going to go out to bid again because this is not going to work. We were surprised at what they told us, pleasantly surprised, because some of the other districts I really don't want to share right now. We will get you some information later. So I'm not just talking off the top of my head here as to what some of the other districts are getting, but it's not pretty what the other districts are receiving. So for once, we felt like this is a good thing for the school district and a good thing for our employees, where whatever salary increase we give them this year, it's really going to be a salary increase they're going to be able to keep. It's not going to be like, hey, here's an increase, and now we're going to take some money away for you for health insurance. But again, it's up to y'all. Whatever you like for us to do, we will do whatever you like.
Mr. President,
Yep.
if we can put that as an action
Yep.
item, either
Well-
next week
Well,
or.
I'm sorry.
No, not next week, I'm sorry.
It
Go
doesn't
ahead.
need to be an action item because the RFP that we have out there allows for an extension with renewal. So all I just need to know is, go ahead, or no, we don't want to do this. If you all tell me go ahead, then we'll tell our agent, tell the insurance company, we're going to go ahead and go with this.
We have to put it as an
The
action
50
item for us to tell you.
No.
No.
It's an
No,
RFP.
no, I mean,
Because of the
I'm sharing this
$55?
information with you because I definitely don't want y'all to come back and say, well, why did you do that? But you already have authorized us to renew it. With the last time we did it,
The superintendent needs to-
as long as y'all don't, yes, as long as y'all
Yeah.
don't tell me why y'all doing
If it
this.
doesn't need to come to the board, let the superintendent say yes. Anybody have any, let's just do it this way.
I
It's not
do.
a vote, but anybody got any comments?
Yeah, I got questions. You want to
I was
speak?
gonna say, since we're putting in $55 more, we have to approve that, don't we?
It's, the reason I'm sharing this with you right now, it's not gonna cost us any additional money because we're already paying it. There was a HIB program,
Oh.
but,
Yeah, you're just
but
moving the money.
I am presenting this as part of the budget because when we're doing all the budget approval, when we do the last one, there's an executive summary that I always give you saying all these things are what's included in the budget. This will be an item that will be in there. It'll say we're gonna get rid of the HIV plan, that we're going to get rid of the mid plan, and that we're going to increase our district contribution to $355. If y'all vote for that and approve it, then we're good to go. That'll be part of the budget adoption process.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Now, Mr. Elizondo, I'm kind of impressed. You weren't going to show this at all today, and you did pretty well for, I wonder what you would have done if you would have prepped for it.
I had already listened to a presentation that one of my other staff members did, so I just kind of did the same thing they did.
I see, okay. How many employees do we have in the district?
3,000, a little over 3,000 employees.
So if I use 3,000, that's a conservative number. I'm trying to see, okay, that's about 73% of our employees, 73.6, that are utilizing the insurance, because you had 2,208 employees using the insurance. So we have 27% of the employees that are just using maybe their spouse or doing something else.
Yes, sir.
So that 73% is a pretty good chunk of our employees that are utilizing the benefit. The question I have, though, is that we've kind of lost the salary battle with some of our neighboring districts that I know that are not paying into their insurance as well as we are. Has there been any thought about what we can do to increase salaries for our employees and not get rid of the insurance, but what would that look like if we did that? I'm certain you've probably done a study on that.
I guess I'm a little confused, because in the proposal for the budget, there is a salary increase for the employees, the TASB study?
No, this is not aside from that, and obviously we'll have more discussion about that aspect of it. I know the recommendation is 3%, I believe. But I'm talking about, once upon a time, we talked about significantly discussed increasing the benefits for our employees. But the feedback I was hearing from my colleagues and from teachers is that it wouldn't impact every employee. And so then what we've done is we put a lot of money into something that's not going to benefit every employee. So the other thing that I've heard through the years in our budget discussions is that we're not competitive with our salary, and that other districts, Northeast, for example, they don't put as much money into their insurance because they've decided not to, but they pay their employees better. So have we looked at potentially adopting that model, because we still are going to have issues with being competitive with salary, because it just always invariably happens. So somewhere the model needs to change a little bit in terms of what we do to approach this. And insurance is great. We're not going to pay any additional dollars. We're putting 55 in. But just for discussion, and this is the forum for us to have that discussion, have we looked at the possibility of what we could do to increase salaries if we didn't put as much money into insurance? I guess that's my question.
You know, for many years, we didn't contribute very much towards insurance. Really, over the past maybe 2 years, 3 years, the board has added a little more money towards that. This past year, we added $900,000, which was $25 more towards insurance. I think a year or two prior to that, we had added another $25 to it. And our focus had always been salaries until we were kind of told, well, let's look at the benefit side of it now and provide more assistance in the health insurance, because when we were looking at some of the districts, they were paying more towards district contributions for health insurance. So that's kind of what we've done over the past 2 or 3 years. We still have been affording the employees a salary increase, but we still have been increasing their benefits as well. And the reason that that's been happening too is because when I come back later and I show you what other districts are offering their employees, one of our neighboring districts, I think their employee-only low plan is like $70 or $80 a month is what they have to pay out of their paycheck. And so the reason we've been adding more money to the premiums is to try to maintain the premiums for our employees lower. And you're right, I am one of those big advocates about saying I would much rather give employees a huge pay increase and not give them anything towards their health, towards their benefits, because they're still going to pay for the benefits. And if we're using $355 towards their benefits on a monthly basis, and we could give that to the employee instead and say, you know what, the district's not paying anything towards your health insurance, we're going to give you the entire amount of money in your paycheck. You decide if you want to buy health insurance or not from us. Not only do you benefit the employee now, but you do it into the future if they retire from the TRS system, because the higher their salaries are, well, when you retire from TRS, they use an average of your pay, your salaries, to determine your annuity for the rest of your life. And so it makes a big difference when you're putting more money into their actual take-home pay than it does into benefits. But there's also that balance where all the other districts are paying into the benefits, and so the employee is always going to eventually look at that. It may not be at the beginning of year 1 or 2 or 3, as Ms. Cadena explained today from TASB, but at some point the employee is going to look at that and say, hey, how come my district's not paying over here? And even though you're giving them a better salary, they're still going to eventually balance the wages with the benefits and compare to the districts to see how we're doing. And I think you need to have that balance a little bit. We couldn't take, if the thought process was that we could take this $55 and instead of giving to the employee as part of a increase in premiums, toward the employer contribution, and take that money, that $1.4 million in total, and give it to employees as a salary increase instead of this, it wouldn't work in this model, only because what would happen is the insurance company would come back and say, okay, that's fine, but we're going to increase your premiums now, because they had to get that money from somewhere, that $1.4 million. And so they would say, well, now we're going to have to increase your employee premiums by $55 to be able to make that. So it's got to come from one side or the other. And so we could tell the employee, well, we're going to give you a $55 a month raise in lieu of giving you this benefit. But then what's going to happen is we're going to say right on the other side, well, we're going to have to increase your insurance, your employee contribution by $55. So in essence, you haven't given them any money, except that in the long term, if they retire from TRS, it will help them there in that their salaries will be higher at that point. But that's the long-term process, depending on if you retire from the TRS system or not.
Thank you for that thorough explanation. I've been an advocate for putting more money into our insurance, just because I know that in the long run, if we get into a difficult position with Austin not funding, we have the ability to backtrack on how much money we put into the insurance. So it makes it somewhat safe. If we invest more and we get better benefits, I think that that would benefit the employee's bottom line as well. Have we conducted a survey? I think we've asked what employees think of their benefits.
Yes, we did.
When was the last time that survey was done?
Not too long ago. I want to say maybe within the past 3 months.
Has the board been provided that survey?
No, not yet, but we will. We'll provide it to you. We shared it with the insurance committee,
Okay.
and we'll share it with y'all as well.
That would be really interesting to see, because I've heard a lot of complaints about the insurance in particular. And so if our employees are unhappy, and this is a marginal increase, I don't know what that would really do.
Sure. And I think we have to do, and I'm sorry for interrupting, but once we look at what we bring to the board, what the other districts are doing, we have to do a little better job of marketing that, because unfortunately, a lot of times, we're always unhappy with the insurance. Because whenever we go get some kind of procedure or something, it never covers what we want it to cover. Because we would like to go into the doctor and say, we don't have to pay you anything. And we don't want to have blood work and everything, and I don't want to pay you anything. I just want to get it done. And so when they say, I get a bill and say, well, you owe me $200 now for this, you're thinking, gosh, I have lousy insurance. I have to pay $200 for this. But when we look at the plans from the other districts and look at our plan, really, it's not bad. But we do have to do a better job of explaining that with our employees, to our employees, so they understand that really what they're receiving is not bad compared to what other districts are offering their employees as well.
We certainly do want to market our benefits for working in the district. The last question I have is, why cancel the mid? I see that 73 employees are impacted, or if they selected the mid-range, but we have less that selected the high. And so we have 73 employees that selected the mid, but we only have 57 that did the high. Why did we keep the high and pick the mid?
This goes back to the preparation thing you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
At the next meeting, I'll bring those charts to you to show you with the different scenarios that we generated for the insurance committee, showing them what an employee would incur when you look at premiums plus co-pays and deductibles, if they were on a low plan, a mid plan, and a high plan. And when you do that, you'll see that the people on the mid plan, when you go say, hey, I'm gonna go to the doctor 4 times this year, or I'm gonna go to the doctor 3 times and I'm gonna go into the hospital, the folks that were buying the mid plan are actually paying more, a lot more for their health insurance coverage than if they would have bought the low insurance plan or even the high one. The ones in the middle were always they're paying more for their coverage and their office visits and everything when you combine them all together than the people on the high insurance, on the high plan. So it really was not a good benefit to be offering our employees because it was really costing them more than if they had just gone low or high, and at the end paid a little more out of their pocket or a little less out of their pocket. But at the end, when you looked at it over the year and combined it, the mid plan was more expensive than even the high plan.
I see, okay. And we'll see that data, you said?
Yep, sure. We'll bring you the little scenarios that we shared with them so you can see that.
Thank you.
And I think members of the board, what I'm hearing this evening is that we do want to extend this for another year, as Mr. Elizondo said. So that's the goal there.
The program, the plan, thank you.
Anybody else? Anything else? Okay, thank you, Ms. Long. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody was great. Okay, we're gonna go to 5, we're gonna go into closed session. This board will now adjourn to closed session pursuant to the following section of the Texas Open Meeting Act. Texas Government Code, Section 551.074, discussing personnel. No final action, decision, or vote will be taken while the board is in closed session. The board shall reconvene the open meeting after the closed session. If necessary, any vote or decision will be made in open session prior to adjourning the meeting. Jackie, let's do 8:20.